Hello everyone, this is Gail from Gail's Upstairs Studio. I hope you're all doing well. As of the filming of this, it is the day after Halloween, and I am very busy getting ready for 2 consecutive weekends of craft shows starting next weekend. And I have been busy putting things together and painting Christmas ornaments and all kinds of things. And so my studio is a mess. So today I thought, instead of doing any kind of a process video, I would take a minute to just share with you some of the things I've done in sketchbooks starting this summer up until present. Some of the things you have seen because I've done it on video, and some of the things you haven't. And it isn't really a sketchbook tour because it's in all of these sketchbooks. And I haven't been as prolific as I wanted to be because I have had a busy summer with other things. But I have done quite a few things, and I thought I might share. These are things that aren't necessarily professional looking. Some of it is very playful and fun. Some of it's illustrative. But I thought it would be fun to just look back and see what I've done over the last couple of months in these sketchbooks. So let's get started. So we will start by looking at these 2 books here. You will remember that if you've watched any of my recent videos, I did one recently about having a basket of art type supplies near my couch, and these are the 2 sketchbooks that reside in that basket, and I have done a few things in here, so we will check these out. And some of these are dated, some of them aren't, and they'll be a little out of order date-wise if they are dated. So this one I did in September. It's done in colored pencil, watercolor pencil actually, and it is just a painting of birch leaves, and I sketched some birch trees in the background, and then I traced a circle and made a close-up of what the leaves would look like. And this one is basically like a creative journal page. I did this in watercolor pencil as well, and I did this in September, and it's just pumpkins and leaves, but then I also kind of wrote some things that fall means to me, like flannel and pumpkins, hot drinks, crisp air, and the colors. And I also have written the colors that I've used and the set that I used to do this. That was fun to do. I did that in an evening. More pumpkins. This was in September too. I have said this before, but I love the different colors of real pumpkins and not real pumpkins. I decorate my house with all kinds of different colors of pumpkins, and I've tended to sketch and draw and color that way as well. And this was done with watercolor pencils as well. And I'm really liking the doing a shape and have that be a feature, and then cover the page with other things around it. This one, I will say, after I finished it, the circle doesn't stand out as much as I want it to, so I should have done a darker background, which I might go back and do at some point. And this is another pumpkin on a pedestal with leaves and berries. I love to draw pumpkins. That's one of my comfort zones, pumpkins and sunflowers. I've always liked to draw and paint those things. And more pumpkins with some flowers. Do you see a theme here? And as you can see pencil marks. I don't worry about that in here. The stems I haven't painted, and I don't worry about that either. It's just fun to look at them and go through and see different colors and things. And I think that's it for this book. Yes. And next is this one. We start back in July for this one. And this one is watercolor paint, Mission Gold, in fact. And I did it in July. And I used a reference picture, I believe, for this, but I don't use reference pictures the way a lot of people do. It really is just kind of an inspiration, and I get the very basics down, and then I very rarely look at the reference picture after I do a quick sketch. And this was a reference picture as well, done with Mission Gold watercolor. And this is another example of how I use a sketchbook. This wasn't just to sketch for sketching's sake. I wanted to kind of try a layout of a painting that I'm going to be doing for my aunt. And the colors will probably be a lot different, and it's going to be an acrylic. So the steps to it will be a lot different. But layout is something that doesn't come naturally to me. So I usually will sketch something out, try different colors in a sketchbook first before I go to a canvas. And this was just a quick scribble, but this here was practicing drawing and sketching hydrangea and bringing them in from different directions and seeing how that looked. This is one that I plan on putting color in. I'm not quite sure whether that will be watercolor or watercolor pencil or even paint pens. That one might be fun to do with some mixed media. And as you can see, it's not square on the page. It's kind of wonky, but that's fine. It's just a sketchbook. And I sketched out some apples here. I haven't done anything else on this page. And this is the kind of page that I do a lot. I'll just want to try something, and then I have room to do other things, and it might coordinate with that. It might be something totally different. I've shown this on the channel before. This was done over 2 or 3 days sitting on my couch, and I had a lot of fun doing it. And I had no idea the direction it was going. I just kind of went with it. And here's the start of another one, and I will finish it at some point. The only thing I didn't do on this page that I suggest you do if you are doing something like this is I didn't make note of the colors or the medium I used. I can tell it was watercolor pencil. So I can probably figure it out, but in order to keep the rest of the page cohesive, if that's something I want to do, it would have been smart to make some notes here. Another one of my comfort zones. This is sunflowers, and I will go back and color it in with something at some point. And this was trying out Caran d'Ache Neo Color 2s. And this was kind of a quilt square pattern that I was just playing around with. No, I don't quilt, but I am fascinated by quilt patterns. My mother was an avid quilter, and I'm fascinated with the patterns. And so I just did that. I did some pattern play, and I used a different pen than I normally would use for this practice. This is with fine liner, which is usually what I use when I'm sketching. But I also have Fudenosuke pens that I use for lettering. And I have seen artists use that for sketching as well. And so I was playing around with doing a pumpkin and some leaves. And the thing about a Fudenosuke pen is that you can get thick strokes and thin strokes in the same pen. So it's really kind of neat. You can see the difference between this one and this one. This is leaves, this is leaves, and this is swirls, and this is swirls. But by using two different pens, I get a completely different look. And that is it for this book. So this was the two sketchbooks that I play with downstairs on my couch, just passing time. Now we'll move into sketchbooks that I use in the studio. This is an Etcher sketchbook. And this is another example of using a sketchbook to test out what I want to paint in acrylic. This is done in watercolor. This is my sister's wedding bouquet, and I actually did a video on painting it in acrylic. But this is where I started, just to test layout and things of that nature. And this is another pumpkin done in watercolor. And this particular one, I was working on different values of color. And that's something that I notice some of my paintings can look kind of flat in watercolor. And so I'm working on value variation. And this is what you would think maybe a waste page, but it really wasn't. I was testing some metallic paints that I got from the Art Spirits. It came in this little tin. She has an Etsy shop, and I love her metallics. And I was just testing out what they would look like on this particular paper, because it isn't like Arch's paper. It does have a texture, but it's a softer texture. And I just wanted to see what that would look like on here. And I will come back in at some point and put other things on this page. This was done on September 23rd, and I did this as a video. Once again, different colors of pumpkins, and you'll see that I'm getting some more variation of values and colors in there all time. And that's it for this one. This is a sketchbook that I have shown you here before. I've painted in it on the channel as well, and it's one that I made back at the beginning of the summer. And this one has some fun ones in it. Once again, not professional by any means, but just playing around and having some fun. Haven't done the cover page yet. But these were done early summer, or no, actually August. Just testing out the paper and testing out the size and things. I do really like this size. And once again, this was seeing what these paints would do. And this page here was blueberries. And I don't know if it's showing up on camera, but there's just three or four blueberries that are using her metallics. And I really like the way that looks. And then over here, I just blocked out some watercolor in some shapes on the page, and I used the metallics in most of the squares to make some patterns and leaves and things of that nature, and I really like that. I might be doing some more of those. Some nasturtiums I did on September 4th. I haven't finished this one yet, but this was done from a picture that I took on a ride in the country with my husband, and it's a farmhouse. I made it a little closer than it actually was in the picture. It was quite far off in the picture, but it was just a farm that we drove by. And this is some blueberries that I did in a video in August. And this was the last video I did. I think this was from the last video I released last week of fall leaves. I think some metallics might be nice on this one too. And just have a couple more to show here. This is my big mixed media sketchbook that I made. And I just have a couple of things in here. This is something I love to take pictures of when we go out on rides in the fall. My husband and I have always done that since we were first together, back when, you know, you don't have a lot of money to spend, but you can usually have enough money to put gas in the car. So we have always liked to go out on rides in the fall to look at the different foliage. And where we live in Maine, we can drive a couple of hours in either direction and get a completely different picture of what fall looks like. And I've always been fascinated with farm stands. Farm stands with big established farms that have a well-curated stand out front, and just people that have a pumpkin patch or an apple orchard or things like that. And so I take a lot of pictures of those, and I have rendered a couple of those in watercolor, line and wash actually. And this you've seen on the channel because I painted this in gouache. Gouache is a new medium. It's actually acrylic gouache, and it's a new medium for me, and I'm still learning it. And this was a video I did. This one I didn't do on camera. This is an example though of what acrylic gouache can do for you. This started out as a daytime scene, and I didn't like it, so I just went back over with darker values of the same colors and turned it into a night scene. So that's kind of a fun thing that I'm learning about acrylic gouache. And that is it for that. And I've done some other art projects, but this is all I have done in sketchbooks. And there was a couple in July and then August through now. And it isn't every day or anything. I know there's people that can fill a sketchbook in 6 weeks, but I have other things I have to do, so I can't always play around in a sketchbook. But it is a very good practice to get into because it informs you of what you can do for a framed piece or just another piece of art. It's a nice practice to get into because it can spark your imagination in ways that you might not necessarily think. And there's no pressure because it's not on a wall, it's not going in a frame, it's in a book, and it's your book, so you can do anything you want in it. I encourage you to try this out, and you do not have to be expensive about it. You can get a notebook and a pencil and see how many different ways you can fill it. I'm wondering, do you have a sketchbook practice? Do you like to just draw in sketchbooks, or do you like to use mixed media? Do you use watercolor? I'm interested. Let me know in the comments. For now, that will be it, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.